Welcome back, class. This is David and Jay with video lesson number 4. My favorite topic, this is video production.
Yeah, this is a great lesson because we already talked about a couple of great assets that you can go and start making. You know, we talked about copywriting, we talked about graphic design, but this video lesson is important because people are watching video so much every single day. Actually, almost 80% of people are watching video weekly. So it's important to make sure that you incorporate that video in your branding strategy. You know, it's a study that was done and it says that viewers actually retain 95% of the information that they see in videos, whereas in copy, they only retain about 10% of it. That just shows you how engaging video is.
YouTube is the second most popular website on the entire internet next to Google. Over 1 billion hours of video are watched every single day on YouTube. That's over 114,000 years. That's how much video is watched daily. So if that doesn't tell you how important video is to your brand strategy, you should look into the process of how video is made and how it interacts with people differently than, say, text or graphics alone. Video is the consummate content that you could use to be able to articulate your ideas and your brand when you can't physically be there with the person. Because as we mentioned, it's the experience economy. Being there in real life and having a real experience is going to be the best way that you can connect with your consumer. Video is going to be the second best way to do that.
There's a bunch of different ways to utilize the tool of video on these different platforms. And next week, we're gonna get into digital branding. So we'll talk about how you operate and how your brand should move on these different platforms. But today, we wanna give you a little taste of that in this video lecture because there's different ways and different things that you should be aware of when incorporating video into your digital branding strategy. So we already talked about how YouTube is just so important when you think about video in the branding strategy, right? YouTube is the second most popular search engine next to Google. Right, 65% of people go to YouTube to watch instructional videos. I'm trying to figure out how to put together a chair. I'm gonna go to YouTube. I'm trying to figure out how to change my oil. I'm gonna go to YouTube, right? So we know that video is super important on YouTube, but let's take a peek into how video can be incorporated on other platforms. Over 8 billion views on videos on Facebook per day. That just shows you the amount of traffic that's coming, right? Over 75 million users watching videos a day. And we'll get into it again next week and the week after that about digital marketing on these platforms, but Facebook being one of the most popular platforms to market on, it's crucial to understand these facts and statistics about videos on that platform. So Facebook is huge, but when you look at Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, they're getting 2 times the amount of engagement on videos than any other platform. So you gotta make sure you incorporate video into Instagram as well. And it's so versatile. You know, you got Instagram stories, you got IGTV, you got regular posts, you got all of these different ways to get people engaged with video on Instagram. And when you look at the demographic with over 1 billion users, over 70% of those users are under 35 years old, right? So we want to think about the culture and the type of meanings that you need to incorporate in your videos that's going to be significant to that type of market.
As Jay mentioned, Facebook owns Instagram, so within the architecture of those two platforms, you can post on Instagram and then link some of those posts, that content, over to Facebook too, cross-sharing between those platforms. And think about the demographics as well. I mean, Facebook, you'll have a lot more maybe older people, maybe Generation X and baby boomers will be on those platforms. So if they're in your target audience, you obviously want to get to them on Facebook. Now, if your target audience also includes millennials that might be on both platforms, it behooves you to use both Instagram and Facebook, cross-share some of that content, and then that doubles, you know, your capacity to be able to reach those people. Also think about the psychology of those platforms as well. Instagram is a very visual platform. Instagram's main basis is pictures and videos. So you're gonna get a lot more engagement on those kind of items, whereas Facebook, you maybe incorporate a lot more text and maybe the Facebook groups. But when you think about the psychology of the platforms themselves, it'll help you in your pre-production process that we'll go into of how to be able to create the content that best engages with your audience based on the platform that you're going to be using to distribute that content. So keep that in mind.
But we also need to think about another platform out there, Snapchat. It's over 10 billion videos watched on Snapchat a day. With over 265 million active users, it's a huge market that you should take advantage of, and specifically with some engaging and entertaining video content.
And let's not forget about LinkedIn, TikTok. I mean, we can tell that all the new platforms coming out within the past, say, 5-10 years are almost exclusively video based.
So with all of these platforms moving to host primarily video content, you need to adapt in your brand strategy to create a lot more video content. You know, I remember back when Vine first came out and I started making Vine videos, it was a big thing because Instagram didn't allow you to post videos at all. It was just pictures. And then Instagram came out with 15-second videos. And you're like, oh, you know, well, now we can make funny videos on Instagram too. And it was kind of this switch and people were kind of transitioning to start making content on Instagram. I remember when Snapchat first came out, Instagram didn't have stories, and then Instagram made it possible to post stories. And I was like, oh, well, and I was doing this thing on Snapchat that I can also do on Instagram. Instagram is doing a great job pivoting with the times and understanding that video is king, right? So you, a brand architect, a brand designer, should understand that too. Video is king, and you have to incorporate that in your brand strategy in order to connect with the consumers that you want to connect with.
So speaking on brand strategy, Jay, break it down again how we go back and refer to the brand identity worksheet to help guide us in our action of creating video content as well.
Absolutely, David. I'm glad you said that, because every asset that we create, the first step is always to go back and consult the brand identity to make sure that you have the correct roadmap to follow when you're going towards these goals, right? So what are the 4 steps to brand identity? Let's review. All right, the first step is to solidify that brand. We want to make sure that we know everything we need to know about that brand. We have all the information to go forward. Second step is going to be pinpoint those customers. Who do we want to reach with that brand? And then third step is we want to figure out those goals. What do we want to happen when that brand reaches those customers, right? What's the call to action? What do we want to achieve? And then that fourth step is going to be create the assets, right? So in this case, the asset is going to be a video. So when we go back and think about what is the aesthetic, what is the look and feel of our brand, right? What actually appeals to the customers? How do they want to receive the brand? How do they want to interact with the brand? And then what goals are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to, sell some new product? Are we trying to create brand awareness? All of this needs to be taken into account in order to create the best, most effective video as possible. You need to go over all of this before you even start pre-production. Speaking of pre-production, I think it's time for us to break down the video production process.
Yeah, so the video production process is one of my favorite processes in the entire world. It's a cradle-to-grave process, much archetypically of what we've done before. It takes brainstorming, it takes the production of the piece, it takes refining that production, and then it takes distributing that production out. So in film, in the video process, we call this pre-production, brainstorming, production, breaking out the lights and the cameras and making it happen, getting all this content captured, post-production, taking that content that you made and then putting it into a cohesive idea, and then distribution, which is now that we have this packaged idea, we want to give it some velocity and send it out through our distribution channels. So we're going to break all those down right now.
So typically when David and I do projects, I take on the producer role, he takes on the director role, and a lot of our work is done in pre-production. We save a lot of time in production, post-production, etc. when we cross our T's and dot our I's and pre-production.
You gotta understand what you're trying to make. You have to be, again, as Jay always mentions, intentional with what you want to do in your message. So if you have your goals and where you want to go, all through your pre-production process, you can make your production, your post-production, your distribution so simple. I mean, the magic is all in the pre-production here. It's not the most fancy and the sexiest part of this process, but if you get this down now in the planning process, you're gonna make all your other stages so easy, so seamless, and they'll go through without a hitch. I mean, that's how we've been able to make our productions simple. When you're coordinating a lot of people coming together in some instances, they have to know where they're going, when they're going to be there, and then what they're gonna do when they get there. You find all that out in the pre-production process.
Yeah, and this is going to be the part where you go back and reflect on the brand identity as well, right? We want to think about the aesthetic, we want to think about the look and feel, the voice, we want to think about the consumers, we want to think about the goals, and with that in mind, we want to figure out how can we logistically get this done, right? How can we creatively put together a script, a storyboard that's going to allow the production to go a lot easier.
So specifically for video production, Jay mentioned a couple of techniques that you'll be using here that maybe you don't use in other steps. In a video, you will be writing a script. Because as your video goes throughout a timeline, as it goes from 0 seconds to 1 minute, it'll unfold in a narrative, right? So you need to write some kind of a script. So in your script, you might be developing lines if there's some kind of narrative process within your video, but say if your video doesn't have any words in it, you still want to have an outline of the script of how the video is going to flow out. So you want to write a script for your video. And then you want to take that script, which is pretty much copy if you think about it, and then you want to be able to put pictures over it, graphics, and that's called a storyboard. So you'll think about your shots. We know that we want medium shots, close-up shots, long shots, maybe we want dolly shots, panning shots. You might want to think about your shots and your process and then draw them out, even in stick figure format. Just that way you're creating a more concrete idea of what you're trying to do in the visual format. And again, this is all before you even break out a camera too. So when you have your script written and you have your storyboard written, now you need to think about the people who are going to be on the set. Who's your crew? And your crew will involve the producer, the director, you'll need camera people, you'll need lighting people, You'll need audio people that can run your audio for you. You may need some production assistants that can help out, just going and grabbing miscellaneous things. You know, if you're on set and then you might need a thing of duct tape or measuring tape that's not on set with you, it's good to have someone on set there that is designated to be able to go make that run if you can. You know, so when you think about all these different kind of roles, then you can start to think about what they'll do on the video production set when you're actually in the production process. And sometimes if you're a small content producer, say that you're like, you know, you're a blogger, or you know, you're just making, maybe you're reviewing for another company, you're an influencer and companies are paying you to review their products, you might have to do all these roles together. You might produce the video, direct the video, run the lighting. We have this cool little lighting thing right here that allows you to, you know, do it yourself. And so you just have to think about all these kind of roles, because those are going to be the things that are needed to make the video happen. And whether it's you doing all those roles, or if you're specifically hiring in or building a team of people that can fill them all, you want to think about all these things before you even start to press action on that camera. And now we've talked a lot about the production process from a pre-production perspective. You also have to think about the post-production process from a pre-production perspective as well. And that involves the budget. How much is it going to cost to be able to put all of these pieces together and send it out in the distribution? I mean, you got to think about how much it's going to cost to run an ad if you're running an ad. You have to think about how much it's going to cost to hire an editor if you're doing that as well. Think about all these things. If it's you again just running the show, you might want to think about how much is your time cost to do this for another company. And if you're getting this budget for a client that you've been able to secure, you have to think about how much it's going to cost them to produce this project and how much it's going to cost us to labor to get the project done for them. Think about all these things in the pre-production process. But now that you have these all together, we're ready to go into the fun part, which is getting everybody on set and starting to make this video.
Yeah, get into the production.
So now this is my favorite part about the entire process. Now we're actually in production. You know, we're showing up on set, we're breaking out the cameras, we're breaking out the lights, we're showing everybody their locations they have to be standing in with their blocking schemas, you know, where they're at in front of the camera. You know, Jay and I have to figure out where we're gonna stand in this. You know, we have a little bit of headroom here. We had to figure all that out. So this is where we break out the cameras and we start to capture things and start to get our raw content for the video. So in order to make this production process go as smooth as possible, we want to refer back to that blueprint. Again, we already made this in the pre-production process. That's going to guide us through every step of this entire process over until distribution when we've done this entire thing. So that's most important in the production process, because we're only going to be here on set shooting one time. And I'll tell you, the worst thing is when you go into the editing bay and post-production and you're looking for a shot that maybe you didn't get, you're not going to be able to get all these people together again on another day just to get that shot. And if you do, that's going to be a heavy expense. I mean, even if you're calling in friends for favors and make these videos, now you're weighing on that relationship of them coming and helping you in the first place. So you want to make sure you get everything down that you possibly can, and even then some, when you're in the production process. So it's going to involve following your script and your shot sheets to a T. You want to get your cast and your crew and everybody, make sure they're all there, make sure everybody's exactly where they need to be, make sure that you have a start time, so you have a call time, hey, everybody be, you know, on set at 7, and we're going to start shooting at, say, 8, 9 o'clock. So this way everybody can get there, you can break down exactly what you're going to do on this process, you can go over with them everything that you've done in pre-production so they can all get on the same page as you, and then you start getting these cameras rolling and start capturing what you need to be able to make this process happen.
So now we get into post-production. And again, if you were really intentional about pre-production, this should be easy, right? Or at least as easy as it could be. Editing is kind of tedious sometimes, but it's important to be diligent about it so that you can get the right outcome, right? So now in post-production, you're gonna have an editor or a team of editors put together that story.
Editing is where all the magic happens. This is where we can create the illusion of the narrative unfolding over time in maybe different spaces or in the same space, because when we shot here and we shot there, that didn't happen in the same time. But if we can match on action correctly, then we can create an illusion that these things are happening cohesively in a timeline too. So editing is a magician's game. So now we're gonna take all that raw material that we had, all those video clips that we took in the beginning, and then maybe some graphic content, maybe some words. You might wanna put some, like Jay mentioned, captions in the bottom. We'll get all of these kind of graphic content, put it into our editing software, and then start to arrange that editing according to, as Jay mentioned from our pre-production process, that script and that storyboard.
So once you get out of the post-production process and you get a final project that everyone is happy with, you get to distribution. Where are we putting this video? Where's it gonna end up, right? Is it a film that we're trying to get in film festivals, eventually the big screen, right? We want it to come out in theaters. What does that process look like? How do we navigate that, right? Is this something that's going straight to social media? Are we posting this to Instagram right away, YouTube right away? You know, what does that look like? How does the video need to look? How do we need to set it up? You want to figure out where is your project going, and then you can create a plan to get it there. And we're going to talk a lot about that next week, so stay tuned.
So in this class, we would love to get cameras in your hands and down in the studio there at Com Arts and shooting these videos actually in person, but because we can't be in person this semester, we'll have you guys writing a video treatment for your campaigns. This way you can conceptualize exactly what will go into that process, because again, if you have a good layout and blueprint for how your production is going to go, your production is easy as pie.
So we'll go through all of your campaigns. We'll figure out, what's a great video idea that's going to amplify the campaign, that's going to allow us to reach more consumers, right? That's going to allow us to achieve more goals. And we'll figure out how we can put that in the script that if we were passionate to a production team, they can knock out that video with no problems. So we'll do that this week.
See you in class.